Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is the West Devon Audit and Governance Committee on the 14th of March. I think we'll go around the room and do introductions. There'll be one or two people here that, for people who are watching, they won't know who they are. So I'll start and I'll go around to my left. If you just say your name and who you're representing, that would be fantastic. So, Councillor Kevin Ball, and I'm Chair of the committee.
Councillor Mike Davies, Vice Chairman of Audit.
Cathy Hall, Democratic Services, West Devon.
Jackson Murray, Grant Thornton External Audit.
Brenda Davis, Devon Audit Partnership.
Pauline Henstock, Head of Finance at West Devon.
Lisa Buckle, Director of Finance at West Devon.
Councillor Edmonds, Lead Member for Resources.
Councillor Julie Yelland, and I'm Oakhampton South.
Councillor Adam Bridgewater, and I'm Tavistock South West.
Thank you, everyone. That's really helpful. Okay. Any apologies? Actually, we have to. Bear with me a second. Yeah. Any apologies, Cathy?
We have apologies from Councillor Samuel. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody else aware of any other apologies? No? Thank you. Declarations of interest. In accordance with the Code of Conduct, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests, including the nature and extent of such interests that they may have in items to be considered. I have one, actually, unusually, we don't normally get them, but on item 8, there is a reference to Oak Rail being one of the partners with the forthcoming transport hub. And as I'm not appointed by West Devon to Oak Rail, I think I need to just give a personal interest that I am part of the executive committee on Oak Rail. There's no pecuniary interest in there at all, though. Thank you. Because you're appointed, you don't need to, Julie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in interest of transparency, I sit on Oak Rail, but I'm appointed by West Devon Borough Council, so it's no interest as such.
Thank you, yes. Okay. Item 3, items requiring urgent attention. I'm unaware of any. No. Then confirmation of minutes. The minutes are on pages 1 to 4. Just go to those. I just go through them page by page. If there's any omissions or corrections, please speak up. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3 and page 4. Everybody happy? Just show of hands, happy that those are accurate? Thank you. I'll sign those after the meeting, Cathy. Don't let me go. Thank you. Okay, so on to the substance of our start of the substance of today's meeting. Item 5, which is the Grant Thornton Audit Progress Report and Sector Update. Councillor Edmonds, are you introducing this one? Or are we going straight to the External Auditor? Item 5. Yeah, I wasn't sure whether you were... That's fine. I'm just asking the question, giving the opportunity. I've forgotten you in the past and I don't want to do it today. I'll hand over to Jackson then, who's here from Grant Thornton. Thank you, Jackson.
Thanks very much, Chair. Good afternoon, members. It's our usual progress and sector update report. I'm going to focus on page 8 of the committee pack agenda, the page entitled Progress at March 2023. And on that page, we set out progress against the key areas of our audit work. So for the 21-22 financial statements audit, we issued our opinion on the 30th of November 2022. That was the day of the legislative target deadline for that financial year. What I'm coming to you with today in terms of the 22-23 audit, unfortunately, isn't the news I'd want to be providing, but I feel it's important that we are open and transparent about this. So the 22-23 timetable under the current legislation sees Mrs. Buckle and the team produce draft accounts by the end of May 2023, or publish a notice to say that the draft have yet to be produced, and then requires audited accounts to be published by the end of September, so the 30th of September 23, or again a notice to say that that's not been possible. While I'm currently aware that Mrs. Buckle and the team are fully intending to publish draft accounts by the end of May to meet that part of the legislative requirement, we are not going to be in a position, I do not believe, to have finished an audit of those accounts by the end of September. So I'd rather tell committee members now and have a more difficult conversation, frankly, today than come to you in 3-6 months' time saying the same message. What I've tried to do through this report is reflect the fact, as I said, I'm fully expecting the council to meet the draft statement publication deadline. This is an audit issue in that we will not be able to audit that set of accounts. So I'm conscious there's a number of implications of this, press implications, public opinion implications of the council, not least Lisa, Pauline and the rest of the team's workload, and that's something that I and the team are acutely aware of, and we're working with finance colleagues to try to resolve that as best as possible. But this absolutely is an audit resource issue in terms of being able to deliver an opinion by that legislative date. If I just look back for the last 2 financial years, if I may. So for 2021, we issued our audit opinion for the council on the 3rd of November. That was after the legislative date that year of the end of September. So there has been an instant in the last couple of years where we've not been able to meet that legislative deadline. Nationally, 9% of local authorities in England met that deadline that year. Grant Thornton, we managed 12%, so roughly in line with the market. As you're aware, we audit the most local authorities. Last year, 21-22, as I said, we published the opinion on the date of that deadline, 30th of November. Nationally, 12% of local authorities had their opinion by that date. Grant Thornton was 20% that year. So we are tracking ahead of nationally, but as you can see from those numbers, it's significantly below expectation of where we were. If you rewind 4 or 5 years, that number was probably 96, 97% of opinions issued by a date. So there's been a dramatic drop-off, and I know we've discussed that at Audit Committee previously. There's a number of issues around that. Frankly, experienced audit colleagues are very difficult to come by, and they don't want to stay in the profession, unfortunately, at the moment. And that's an issue for all of us, all audit firms to try to address, and government is well aware of that. I think what my proposal is today is to alert you to the fact that it's very unlikely that publication date will be met. As I said, that's an audit issue, and that's something that we are unable to meet. We've been working with Mrs. Buckle, Mrs. Henstock and other colleagues to work out, as I said, a plan for delivery, and I think what I probably need to do is continue to bring progress reports and plan updates back to this committee through the next couple of meetings so that you can keep on a track of where we are with delivery of that audit opinion for the 22-23 financial year. As you're aware, after this coming financial year, so 22-23, your auditors then change under the new procurement. That's when the new fee structures come into place as part of that procurement. And I understand that the incoming auditors have also been in contact with Mrs. Buckle, and they'll be in contact with ourselves as well to arrange handover. That's the news that I wanted to give you today. As I said, it's not the news I wanted to be sat here telling you, but I think we have to be realistic that this isn't just a West Devon issue. This is a national challenge in terms of audit delivery, and unfortunately, that's something that is going to be impacting upon West Devon as well. In respect of our value for money responsibilities, then what we're proposing to do is a joint arrangements report for 21-22 and 22-23. Given we've not formally reported the findings of that work yet to you, with 2 weeks left of the financial year, it seems appropriate and more timely to report that. So You will still see commentary on the arrangements in both financial years against all of the areas we're required to do, but you'll have a single report setting that out in kind of a linear programme to show that. The only other update I wanted to give you very quickly was around the housing benefit subsidy work that we do. So that work is currently underway with colleagues in the Revenues and Benefits team. We have a separate team who do that work for us. They're progressing well and intend to issue that report shortly. There's no significant findings coming out of that work in terms of significant numbers or values of errors identified as a result of that work. The rest of our report today then covers some sector updates. As normal, I won't go into those in huge amounts of detail, but it does cover audit quality, which is one of the drivers for increase in auditor workload, the procurement that I referred to, and the last page of our report today is some practical guidance for audit committees released by SIPFA, who are the sector leads. So at that point, I'll stop and open for any comments or questions.
I just want to make a couple of comments, guys, and then I'll open up to you if that's okay. Obviously, it's very disappointing that the accounts aren't going to be done in time, and obviously the biggest concern that I have, and I'm sure my colleagues also have, and I know that Lisa feels the same way because I've spoken to her about this, is the potential implications on our reputation, really. And I think whatever happens going forward, there has to be communication from Grant Thornton that this is the result of a resource issue at your side of things and nothing to do with West Devon. Unfortunately, we're responsible for the publication of our accounts, so it will come back to us to a certain extent, but that's one thing that absolutely has to happen, and certainly I'd like to make a recommendation really that we can formalise this in a little while if we need to, that next year's audit committee needs to stay on top of that. It's an important issue. The other thing I wanted to say is that obviously I know that you indicated that was it last year that was late as well, November last prior to that I don't think we have been, and obviously so it feels a bit frustrating, and you haven't mentioned the date either, which is the worrying thing. And of course normally we get our external audit done and the guys can then focus on budgeting for the following financial year, and they're going to be trying to do that as well as dealing with an external audit out of that sequence. And I'm concerned about the pressure that is going to put on the teams, and so I think, and certainly I'm sure my colleagues would like to say a bit more about that. But I have one specific question, and then I'll open it up. So all your authorities that you are doing this with at the moment, how many others are being delayed and how many are going to be completed on time?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I would say the majority will not be completed by the end of September in terms of Grant Thornton audits.
Do you have a number, Jackson? Because I think it would help us. A majority of what? A majority of 3, a majority of 15, a majority of 25?
So in terms of our planning, within Devon, and I'll restrict it to Devon at the moment, I would say 2 or 3 authorities will have an audit finished by the end of September out of double-digit number of authorities throughout Devon.
Okay, I think we might come back to that, but I know that other people want to make some comments. I think Councillor Yellen, you were first.
Thank you. When you're speaking, I wonder if you could just pull the microphone a bit. I couldn't actually hear the last response, and it was actually one of my questions, which had been about the amount of councils that you were going to get done, the amount that you weren't, and also how you choose which ones that you will complete. Because as the chairman has said, this is the second year in a row. There is going to be an impact on our team when they're preparing budget for next year, and then they're actually suddenly finding their resources are going to need to be going into sorting out the external audit, particularly when our team have delivered their level, what they are supposed to do in a timely fashion. So there's going to be impacts on that. So I'm sorry to repeat Councillor Ball's question, but I couldn't hear your answer, so perhaps you'd be kind enough to come back to it. I do have a couple of others, Councillor.
Yeah, sure. Is that better now? Sorry, I'll lean in. So my response to Councillor Ball's question, within Devon specifically, I would say 2 or 3 at the moment. What you can never tell is when you begin an audit what you're going to find. So I can't say for sure now all of those audits will be completed. In terms of those looking to begin at a time that could see completion, it would be 2 or 3, I would say, within Devon. In terms of the question around how are the audits selected, I suppose, there's a number of different things going on there. If I think specifically to the West Devon audit, the challenge we really have is around the experienced qualified auditor, so the person who leads the on-site team. Last year during the West Devon audit, we had 2 individuals filling that post, and they changed twice because both left the team to seek other employment. So when we're choosing other audits that may well meet September, there's an element of continuity makes an audit easier. You have those relationships, you know how systems work. So if there's an existing team who have completed an audit historically, and we know that they can complete that audit, it would make sense for us to staff that audit first, given that there are those continuing relationships, rather than trying to move people around teams every year to make it work. So in this instance, as I said, we had 2 people leave our team who were working on West Devon during 1 audit year. That's the challenge we're facing. People are leaving the role, and it's very, very difficult to find people to come into that role with the relevant experience that we require. So given we had no one experienced and no one with the real relationships with the team, that's why this is one of the audits that we're saying is very unlikely that we would be able to complete by that timetable.
Thank you. Can I just have a supplemental? So on the back of that, and given there's clearly going to be some reputational damage to the council, it would be helpful to know what you are doing actually to increase your capacity within staffing, and well, why people are leaving, which perhaps you may not want to say that in the public forum, but just really what you're doing really to increase your capacity, because clearly you have several councils that you need to audit, and you don't have the staffing capacity to do it. So this is going to impact more than just West Devon. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I'll say what I can in a public meeting clearly. So there's a number of things. I can't remember the last time we haven't been actively advertising for these roles. There's a difference between having an advert out and people actually applying to that role quite clearly. There's a recognition that actually growing your own people, so massive increases in graduate, school leavers, university placement year students, but clearly that's a longer term programme as well. You're not going to get someone in for the first year and they have to study 3-5 years to get to their qualification. Looking abroad at alternative employment options, so Grant Thornton's an international firm, we have member firms in other countries, so is there a way to use colleagues in other parts of the world, especially now we've lived and worked through COVID, that remote working is possible, so making use of colleagues overseas, and overseas recruitment is probably the number one area that we're seeing people actually apply for these roles right now. So that's the recruitment side. Clearly internally we need to look at making this an attractive career. That's not just a Grant Thornton issue, I don't think. As I said, those numbers that I read out, so 9% and 12%, that's across the country. So there's 5 other audit firms providing local audit services as well as Grant Thornton. Clearly we're all struggling and we're all looking for people in a diminishing pool. Why is audit accountancy not an attractive career anymore? I think if I knew the answer to that, we maybe wouldn't be in the problem, or maybe I wouldn't be sat here today doing the job I'm doing. There's been huge changes in what audit is, the expectations, the pressures, the regulatory burden, and I suppose the stress that causes, as well as increases in workload, reductions in fees. Generally, they're now on the rise again. It's been documented in a few publications, but it's not just a single issue that you can put your finger on. And I think actually people now see accountancy qualifications as the stepping stone in their career. So you'll come in as a graduate, get your qualification, and then move out of audit, whether that's to finance teams in local authorities, the NHS, whether that's completely different sectors and spheres. These individuals are massively marketable. And I think the challenge we have is how do we retain them within audit when there's lots of other offers coming their way that may well sound a lot more exciting. In reality, who knows?
Thank you. May I just have a question to Mrs. Buckle, if I may? I mean, given that this is clearly going to have an impact on the finance team, do you feel confident that this is something that your team, because you'll be trying to sort budgeting out and deal with auditing at the same time, so is this something that you feel that you have capacity with your own team to be able to do that?
I think it's going to be very, very difficult. Certainly by October, which is when I think the audit is planned to start, we would have hoped to have got, you know, in a normal year, we would have hoped to have had the majority of the audit complete by then, because as we move into October, that's when we're starting to look at budget setting for the next year. We have a lot of reports that the team have to do to both councils around monitoring, both of the revenue budget, the capital programme, putting together future budgets. So I think it's going to be very challenging for us. Because the time that we have available to resource the audit is during the summer months, not during the winter months. But obviously we will do, as we always do, the best we can to flex our resources.
Thank you, and you do an excellent job, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yellen. Councillor Bridgewater, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm not sure who quite to direct this question to, whether it's Lisa or Jackson. It's due to the lack of an audit, does that bring any financial or legal implications upon West End Borough Council, i.e. in the way of a fine or anything like that?
No, it wouldn't, but I do think that there is a reputational risk to West Devon, because by the end of September, we should have had our accounts audited and be able to put an audited set of accounts on our website. What we will have to do is, if the accounts obviously haven't been started to be audited yet, we will have to put a notice on our website to give the reason for that. And obviously we will say that that is due to a shortage of audit resources within Grant Thornton. But if you're a member of the public and you're looking at West Devon Borough Council's website, all you will see is that the audited accounts aren't there. You probably wouldn't go and look and try and find a notice and find out the reason for that. So that would be my concern, is that there would be a reputational risk for us, because we can't say that we've got an audited set of accounts by the target date.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, listening to that interest, and quite a few of the questions I was going to raise have always been raised by my fellow councillors. I mean, I come from an auditing background, having not for many years now, but then you say about the current situation is that, you know, auditors are massively marketable. In my time, which is going back to the 80s and 90s, and auditors always were massively marketable. I just think about that when I qualified. My year, I think it's about 200 of us at the company I was working with at the time. The vast majority went off to work for PLCs within 3 or 4 months. You know, they were off, you know, to earn supposedly more money. Whether they did or not, I never know. We'll never know. But then, and a lot of people stayed where they were. So I think to use that as an excuse, that's always been the situation in auditing and in accountancy. If you're qualified, you're a marketable asset, and you can go where you like, really. But what concerns me is it's been mentioned about the reputation of the Borough Council, because we do pride ourselves in having an excellent finance team. You know, do a fantastic job year in, year out. And now we're going to be in that situation when we can't publish the accounts. As Mrs. Buckle said, we can put something on the website to say why, but then we don't even know when they are going to be published, because you're saying at the moment, you know, you haven't got the staff because there's a shortage, but when will you have the staff? If no one's been allocated to West Devon Borough Council, we could get to October, November, and we're still no further forward than we are today. So we haven't had any assurance that the accounts actually are going to ever be completed. And in looking at that, also, since we're moving to new auditors, Will we be a high priority? Probably not. We are a small council. So one of the questions I'm going to have is, you know, if in my business now, if I have a contract with one of my companies, and all my companies I deal with are major PLCs, and if I don't get it right, they give me a financial penalty. So do we have a reduction? Is there a possibility in reduction of fees from Grant Thornton, because you haven't actually come through? Because when you actually, at the beginning of the year, when we discuss these things, what the fees are going to be, what's going to be supplied, we haven't actually had that service supplied to us, although we're still probably expected to pay the same fee. So are we entitled to some kind of reduction in fees because of the quality of service we've had? So that's one thing, quality of the fees. Secondly is, you know, have we any idea when these accounts are going to be completed? Because as councillors, we do have a responsibility, as to the officers, to the electorate of West Devon, who pay their council taxes, to say, yes, we've collected all these council taxes, not just for us, but we've collected it for other authorities as well. But we haven't got this sort of any idea when we actually provide the final accounts and put them online. We can put some draft accounts online with some sort of caveat to say why, but then we've got no assurance of when these accounts actually are going to be finalised. So it's nice to know that that's going to be somehow sorted out. Because the thing is, as is this big turnaround, we take on new accountants, you take on new clients, new councils. You'll probably be giving more priority to the new councils, the new clients, because they're the ones you've got to keep soft in a way, isn't it? So I mean, there's lots of things in there to think about. So it's disappointing, but then I think we do need to know whether when these accounts are going to be published. And I don't think you probably know that because we haven't got the staff to do them at the moment. And also whether we can have a reduction in fees. That's it from me, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, through you, Chair. So, taking them in the order you just summarised, when, I think I'd agree, I can't say I will absolutely have issued an audit opinion by X date. And so I think what I need to do is agree with Lisa, Pauline and team when realistically we think we could do the work, and when is that realistically going to have the least impact on the finance team as well, and manage that programme plan. And maybe that's what we then bring back to audit committee in terms of this is our agreed work plan, and then we monitor progress against that work plan through committee and outside of committee through the finance team. Sorry, I'll lean in again. So that's the answer to that one. In terms of fees, we wouldn't be proposing a fee reduction. So we would still have to do all of the work. I appreciate it's not by the target date, but we're still putting in all of that resource. Ultimately, fees and fee variations, public sector audit appointments are who we have a contract with and who the council have the contract with. So they are effectively the mediator within this, and any variation to scale fees, which they also set, have to be approved by PSAA. So we would submit any variations, they would consider those and decide ultimately on whether those variations are appropriate or not. So we wouldn't be proposing a fee reduction.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was just thinking actually with most jobs, whatever industry you work in, if you have somebody who's got experience in that field, like you have now, we're working with West Devon, but when somebody new comes in, there's a whole learning curve, which means more hours are spent. So we could end up finding that you could come to us and say, actually, it's going to cost more because we've had to spend a lot more hours on it, which would be a concern. But surely, actually, there's agreement with you with the PSAA, no, the contract people, that you provide a service for a fee, but then if that service isn't provided in full, but due to time limits, then there must be some recourse for having some money back, is there not? Sorry.
Yeah, I think just following on, but it was one of the things that I was going to bring up as well. I think I appreciate that. I mean, in what we're talking about is technicalities of an agreed contract, right? And there are people in this room who have more knowledge about this than myself. But it seems to me that, albeit through no direct fault, you're not going to be able to fulfil your contract with us in a timely fashion. It's going to be late, as you will be with, what did you say, double-digit councils elsewhere. And that seems to me that we have some, gives us an opportunity to, look at that and find some way of, because potentially Councillor Davis referred to, potentially extra money, extra fees for doing extra work, but actually that applies to our team as well. There's going to be an implication potentially of extra cost for our team, because then maybe we're going to have to get extra people in to cover the shortfall in hours. So actually, this is a proper mess, really. I'm sorry to use that word, but I've as I've thought about this before today, I've actually got crosser and crosser about it. I feel quite frustrated about it, and particularly defensive of the team, because I know how hard they work anyway, and that, to have the external audit, as my colleagues have all said, dropping on probably among the busiest period of their work year. They're busy all year, but particularly that period of time, I just find really frustrating, Jackson. And I appreciate that, you're here facing it up, and you're responding. But I'm not asking you to comment on that. I just wanted to follow on from the Vice Chairman's point, and I think we need to have a discussion about that probably outside of this this meeting, really. Something else I wanted to bring up. Just bear with me a second. I just consult my notes. And we'll come to this in a later item, so I don't want to pursue this in detail now. But of course, there's a potential. We're adding an additional risk to our risk management, and we've got later in the agenda we'll talk about our risks within the authority by having the challenges that the team are facing. And this isn't a comment about the ability of the team, more about how they manage time to do two jobs in the space of time that they're normally doing one job. That adds a potential risk to us in things being done, possibly things being missed. And guys, please understand, I'm not passing a judgment on yourself. It's a matter of fact. If you're overworked to try and meet extra thing, that's a risk. So we'll discuss that in more later on in the meeting. But I just wanted to kind of raise that now as being out there. I think the final question I have that I'd like to put out to you is: there any way that we could find a way of you completing our accounts, even if it's a late, but by say November or so they're completed, but they're not starting in October, so going through the last 3 months of the year. Is there any way we can find a way of completing by the beginning of November, similar time period to last year? There are two possibilities to this. One, I think you probably say no to, but I'll put it out there. Is there a possibility of a light touch audit based on our audits over the last few years? I think our audits have been very strong, and I understand that there's an inherent risk in doing a light touch audit. But obviously we're moving to a new set of auditors. I'm assuming they're going to be quite detailed as they go forward anyway in next year, so that gives an opportunity for that to be potentially covered. Or is there another way of because we're a small, relatively speaking, we're a small council with relatively small budget, and how we're set up. I appreciate the auditors that you need to apply may not know that, but is there any sort of way that we could find a way of getting our accounts squared off before the peak period for the guys? I've got to ask because, I am concerned about it. I'll hand over to you, Jackson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I'm going to do everything I can to get the audits finished as soon as I can. If it's the end of November, then that would be not great, but that's at least better than December or dare I say later. As I said, I can't give you a date at the moment. I'm going to do everything I can in terms of getting other people into the team, but clearly they're going to take some time to get into the team and then require induction, etc. In terms of a light touch audit, we have to audit to the same standards every year. So regardless of the size of the council, you're still audited to the same code that's the manual that colleagues have to produce the accounts to, and international auditing standards don't change based on size of authority. Our regulators wouldn't look at the date that an audit was completed. They'd look at the quality of that audit and what we did to get the assurance that we need to issue an opinion. So I'm not going to be able to say we won't look at this area or we'll do slightly less in this area this year to necessitate a faster audit opinion, because that risk then sits firmly on myself, and if I get them picked for a file review, the regulator is not going to take, I wanted to get the audit done quicker as an answer as to why I hadn't done something. So professionally, I wouldn't be able to do that. But I appreciate the question. Look, it's not something that Grant Thornton and I want to continue on forevermore. Having older years audits still open is not good for any of us. So it's in all of our collective interest to get this completed as soon as we can. The longer these audits go on, the more challenging it is in terms of evidencing some of the judgments or estimates that may have been made. You can get caught by developments in standards. We talked about infrastructure assets as one of the areas nationally that was an issue last year. There are still a number of audits going back to 2021 and before that are still open and ongoing. All of those new issues then get put onto that audit year as well. So it is in no one's interest for an audit to continue indefinitely. I want to get these audits completed as soon as I can, but I need to do that to the right quality standard to be able to give you the assurance ultimately that we've done the work on the accounts and you can therefore approve them.
Okay, I'll come to you, Councillor Ridges, in a second. I just want to quickly respond to that. I mean, I thought that's what you would say, but I thought I would ask because, you know, trying to find a solution to find a way through. But I accept your response to that. I will say something else, but Councillor Ridges, I'll let you speak first.
Is that on?
Yeah.
It's sort of like Norman Collier, this thing, isn't it? Microphone going. I think we are where we are, really. Firstly, Jackson, it's not difficult. I've been in your shoes many times, coming in front of other people and taking the flak, or what we call in advertising, the slippering from the client. And it isn't easy, so I appreciate you being here. It's not a situation that anyone wants to be in, but I notice it's a lot bigger than West Devon as well. When I joined this committee, I think about 3-4 years ago, I was absolutely gobsmacked at what you were auditing and the level of it. We, in the private sector, you know, I run a business that turns over about 6-7 million. What we have to produce are audited figures. What we are looking at now, it was absolutely gobsmacking, the level of, performance management, thematic reports, delivery plans, every strategic risk. I think this is a bigger problem. It's a bigger problem here, is that we're at net 7 million budget. I mean, if we were in the private sector, we wouldn't exist because of the costs of the auditing and the analysis. So I think there has to be a way of moving forward. And there's a way of moving forward is that whether it's through Grant Thornton and also West Devon, is that we must advise, we must get to our MPs. We just do not need this level of scrutiny at such small organisations. And they pile on more and more. I can understand if you're Spelthorne Borough Council, whatever, with 750 million audit and property debts, or whatever, or Devon County Council. But it seems to me a bit one size fits all. And it seems unfair, and I think this problem isn't going to end. And I think we've got to be looking from a West Devon perspective and a Grant Thornton perspective of how we can trim the size of what we are asking you, external auditors, qualified members of SIPFA, and you have to go through a hell of a lot of that, and it's probably of the least attractive of many of the accountancy routes into auditing. So I think we've got to move forward from it. We've got to move forward together, and whether that is a request to oh, that sounds like another report on you, Lisa, is that how can we try and slim these requirements down or advise? Because to me, it's just too much. We are doing far too much, so much more than what we should be in terms of auditing the figures and the level of risk management, risk. Well, there wouldn't be any risk if you were in the private sector because you'd spent so much time auditing it that you wouldn't be doing it in the first place. So could I have probably from, there's a job from Jackson and the team that if they could make and lobby and advise councils like us, and maybe we could get together with our peer groups that we have and just say, we just do not lead this, or how can we try and trim down what we are requiring our external auditors to do? And is there an opportunity is that we can contract other bodies who are outside external auditing bodies like Grant Thornton with their SIPFA members to do the analysis? So one is trim, and that's probably a level to government, and the other one is potentially look at what we are asking our external auditors to do, and I wonder if that's a potential report. It's a big question, one I can't really answer, but I'm really quite surprised when I joined this committee of how big the annual report is, and I think a lot of it could be potentially unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ridges. Some excellent points. Did anybody want to respond to any of those specifics? Jackson, do you want to go first, and then I'll call in Lisa?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd agree wholeheartedly with what you've said. Is my summary. I would argue that if a member of the public picks up West Devon's set of accounts, which is over 100 pages, are they actually going to read those and make sense of those? Arguably not, but that would be my assumption. I don't know that. In terms of national lobbying, Grant Thornton and the other audit firms absolutely are doing that. There is a new regulator that's been set up to regulate local audit. It's called ARGA, so the Auditing, Reporting and Governance Authority. That replaces various disparate responsibilities that were with different bodies. Is that going to change things overnight? Doubtful, in all honesty. I think the challenge we have, as you've rightly said, so finance colleagues have to produce the accounts to international financial reporting standards. That's the same as a FTSE 100, basically FTSE 250 company. We then have to audit those, and our regulator expects us to do the same level of work as we would as an organisation of that size, because the standards are the same, so we need to get the same assurance. I think until there is a change in the SIPFA code, which is what Pauline and colleagues produce the accounts to and we audit to, the likes of property valuations, the likes of pension valuations, we sit here and talk about those an awful lot, whereas actually they make no difference to the council taxpayer of the borough. It's a frustration that I share and our audit team share, and dare I say, public sector auditors didn't join public sector audit to work out how much this building is worth and test it to its nth degree. And is that part of the reason why colleagues are saying, actually, this isn't what I signed up for? Again, that's personal view. So there are things going on, and we are trying to lobby, but there's a big challenge there. Ultimately, the accounts of West Devon and all other authorities get consolidated up to the whole of government accounts level. And I think the challenge that's been pushed back previously is ensuring that all accounts are produced to the same standard so that the whole of government accounts can be produced. But something needs to change. I think there was a reflection in the Redmond review a few years ago that this needed to be looked at, and standards and requirements needed to be looked at. That's ultimately a government decision, government-led decision as to what accounts do actually reflect. But sorry, that was quite a long response to your comments, but I feel quite strongly about this as well.
Thank you, Jackson. I mean, I'm intrigued with ARGA. Is that to prevent cooking the books? Or that? I think obviously because we're public, you know, we're handling public money, aren't we? So the legislation is all there to understandably, you know, give protection to that public money, which I don't think any of us would disagree with. But I think Councillor Ridge's point is, well, but what I was going to say is it's about degrees, and I think the point that you've made quite rightly is, you know, we seem to have gone too far beyond that degrees of support. But Lisa, did you want to make a comment to that? Because obviously you see it from the other side of the fence.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I totally agree about the amount of auditing work that is done around fixed assets and pensions, and particularly around fixed asset valuations. As I say, as Mr. Murray has said, it makes no impact on local authority accounts at all, because a lot of it is just reversed back out again. And we were hoping that when Sir Tony Redmond did his review, that the amount of work on pensions and fixed assets would have been lessened. However, that was not the outcome of the review. The review did not agree that. Many councils, including ourselves, gave consultation responses to that review. We lobbied through the LGA, through our MPs, to try to get that changed. But unfortunately, it wasn't changed. That was the result of that review. I think there is another call for evidence. So the Levelling Up Housing and Communities Committee of the government has now issued a call for evidence on financial reporting and audit. That's asking a whole wide-ranging series of questions about the purpose of the accounts, how to make local authority accounts better meet the needs of users, and the deadline for submissions of that is the 17th of April. So we will be responding to that. Their PSAA have also opened their annual client survey. So again, we can respond to that about how our audit experience has been and how we feel that will be in the future. But I think that is probably the only things we can do is respond to those national consultations to try to effect change. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Lisa. Councillor Edmonds, did you want to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, if it's not possible to perhaps drop things out of the audit schedule, perhaps there's a compromise in terms of the frequency of checking of some of these items. You know, do we have to check the pension valuations, the property assets every year? And maybe we take, there's some discretion there, that particularly if the last audit was deemed to be a low risk, is there a need to come back and check that the following year and the year after? And maybe it's a case of spreading the workload rather than dropping any particular item out of the audit system.
That's an interesting point. Do either of you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I think, as I said before, the way our auditing standards are constituted at the moment and the code, we have to do the same thing every year because we're looking at a fresh set of accounts and numbers. So whereas with internal audit, you may say you've done a review of this area, there's been low risk or low findings, we will defer that for another couple of years. As our cycle is annual, so we have to test these things every year because the 1 year that you don't test them, there could be an issue. And as I said, it's the standards just say you have to get assurance over all of the numbers in those accounts.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I fully support what Councillor Richards says. It's ridiculous what we go through, but then there was a lot of lobbying to government. Then we had the Redmond Review, which was about the simplification of these accounts. And as Jackson said, you know, we have 100 pages of accounts, but who actually reads them? You know, probably 95% of the people who read those accounts are sitting in this room. And that includes the leader of the council sitting at the back there, because he's the one who has to sign the sheet at the front of the nice little booklet. But then, well, we had that Redmond Review, and from what I understand the Redmond Review, yes, it might simplify the accounts, but it actually increases the back work. Yeah. You know? Everybody else, internal auditors, you know, actually, first of all, the West Devon Borough Council Finance team, the internal auditors and the external auditors have to do a lot more work in the background. So we seem to have gone backwards rather than forwards on that one. It might be a short few front pages for people to read, but then I don't know what good lobbying's actually done. It's actually probably made things worse, but then all we can do is comment on that, really. I don't know whether there's an appetite for the government to do anything, because they could say, well, we've already done that with the Redmond Review. That's it, really.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think, obviously, as we've heard from Lisa, there's communication happening over the next few months. I think that I'd hope that, you know, next term's audit committee will pick that one up and you know, something that probably more political than anything else, and therefore the elected politicians can pick that. Sorry, I haven't turned that off. Elected politicians hopefully can pick that up and do a bit of work behind the scenes to try and get that looked at. But I've got a proposal to make, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to. I know we've had a good debate on this. I know we've been going for some while, but I think it's an important topic for us as an authority. I just want to make sure that everybody has said what they wanted to say before I bring forward a proposal. Yeah, please do, Councillor Bridgewater. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here trying to think of questions that the public would ask about the audit of the accounts. And does the audit have to be done by one organisation, i.e. Grant Thornton? You know, we're talking about the workload. Is there a chance that we could split it between two organisations, one that could take the pensions and fixed assets, one that could do the risks and stuff like that? Does it have to go through one organisation?
I'm happy to go with that. So, yes, is the simple answer. At the moment, yes. One of the things being looked at, not just public sector, is joint audits and two audit firms auditing the same entity. But at the moment, the way the procurement was structured and the way that local audit is structured, it's a single auditor who has to do the work.
It's a good question, though, because people in the community wouldn't necessarily know that and understand that. So it's a fair question. Do you have anything else? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I think, I mean, you know, I think we've heard what Jackson said, and as Councillor Ridges quite rightly said, and I did say earlier on, you know, appreciate the fact that you're sat here with us, you know, to respond to the questions and the comments we've made. You could easily have, you know, ducked out of that or hidden behind Teams. But the fact that you're sat with us here, I think we all appreciate that. And, you know, we understand it's not your fault, and you're here representing what is quite a difficult situation. And, you know, I think we've all kind of discussed this, and we recognise that there is a sector-wide issue here. Obviously, for us, we want our accounts sorted, so we're coming from the perspective of looking after our accounts for our the community, really. With that in mind, members, I wondered if you'd considered this as an idea, really, because I think we have to kind of respond in some way. I wonder if making a proposal of writing to Grant Thornton to actually formally request if there is any way of expediting our external audit. I mean, it's probably unlikely, but I think we have to do something. So, you know, if a letter from myself as chair and Lisa as the 151 officer asking if that could be considered, would members support that proposal? I'd like to formally propose that. Would anybody like to second it before we carry on? Thank you. Councillor Bridgewater seconded that. So, members?
Yeah.
Well,
we're not happy.
Yeah, basically we're not happy and we want it done quicker. But obviously we'll say it in a bit more of a professional way. That's essentially, I think, what I was considering.
I'm very happy with that, but I think we've got to be seen to be moving forward and trying however we can, whether that's internal, what can we pull away from Grant Thornton, if we can pull anything away. And if Grant Thornton as well would take our concerns, we won't be the only one that somebody's had to go in front of and say that it's going to be late. But we collectively lobby, because, as you say, you know, the residents reading this, it's far too detailed, far too much analysis, and try and get some positive outcomes out of the difficulty. But I support your letter in the short term, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Ridges. Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree with the point that you're making. And I would, you know, this is obviously our last meeting before the new term will start. And I'm hoping that next term's audit committee would pick that point up and pursue that point. You know, but I'd like to stay focused on this pressing issue of the timeliness of getting our accounts sorted, which is why I'm being focused on that letter, if that makes sense. I'm certainly not disagreeing with your point. Councillor Yelland.
I was going to say, actually, yes, I agree and support your letter, but I also very much agree with what Councillor Ridges has been saying, and perhaps we ought to formally request that it is an agenda item. I don't know if it sits on the audit agenda or if it has to go to another one, but actually for a debate around lobbying for change from the audit committee for the next team.
Yeah, yes, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Kathy, can you give us a lead on that? Can we do that? Put something that will be considered in the next term, or Lisa? Lisa?
We can certainly bring a report back to the next committee chair. Yes, with a copy of the letter resulting from this committee, and perhaps a copy of our consultation response to the government's call for evidence.
Okay, Julie. Would you be happy if I modified my proposal to include that in then? That the proposal will be to write to Grant Thornton requesting if there's any way of us, being able to get our accounts audited quicker than we're being sort of indicated at the moment. But secondly, to put something to the new terms audit committee that they look at this whole area of legislation around the audit process, and maybe that they are able to, sort of lobby relevant politicians about potential change on that. Would you happy for that to be all in one proposal, which Councillor Bridgewater's seconded? Yeah. Members, shall we vote on that?
Unanimous, Chair.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. My apologies. We'll pursue that, and I think that's myself and members. If you're happy to leave that with myself and the 151 officer, we'll get a letter drafted up quickly and sent off, and then we'll see what happens, I guess. We'll draw that. Okay. Oh, sorry. Did you want to say something else, Councillor Davies, please?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. There were other things in the report as well.
There were. Right.
So we focused on one. But one thing I knew, but it says at the very beginning actually, which I think we should touch upon, and I know actually at the last meeting we had in beginning of November, Jackson did mention what was going to happen, but it does actually start off. It says we have issued an unqualified opinion of the 21-22 financial statements on the 30th of November. So I think we should actually acknowledge that, because that is Auditor's way of saying this is a good set of accounts. So I think we should congratulate the finance team on that. But no issues have been raised, which we can deal with. So we've got an unqualified opinion, which is very good. I think it's worth mentioning.
Thank you, Vice Chair. That's
and one other thing after that. Well, we all know what we've been discussing. How do all the other councillors get informed about this? So is this going to full council, or is an email going out to councillors to say what was discussed today?
Only through the minutes of the audit committee meeting would other members be aware. So it doesn't normally go on to full council. Really,
the group leaders should actually inform their groups, be aware of the minutes and pick something up, isn't it? Yes. Right,
yeah, I think it's a very good point. I think there'll be members within the authority that won't have read the agenda because they're on other committees and they time and all the rest of it. I think this is an important issue, and obviously of the 31 members, other members, a number of those members will be back here. Some of those won't have been on this committee, so will possibly be unaware. I think maybe I'll have a conversation with the leader after this about and Lisa about that. But I think that's a very good point. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I think that even if an email went out just to members, just a paragraph explaining what's going on would be useful. Make sure everybody knows.
I understood what you meant, but yeah, I think that's right. And I think picking up your other point, if we could formally note within the minutes, Kathy, the Vice Chair's comments relating to the team for the unqualified opinion, I think that's quite a right thing to do. think we all agree with that. Was there anything else that you wanted to bring up, Vice Chair? Yeah. Members, anything else on that report before we draw that to a close? I think we just note it other than what we've done. Kathy, that's correct, isn't it? So, yeah, thank you, Jackson. You're welcome to stay. I think you probably will. You normally do. So thank you for facing things up. We appreciate it. So, we'll move on to item 6. The proposed internal audit plan for 23-24, and we've got Brenda here today. Before we start, Brenda, just remind us who you are and why you're here today instead of Paul. Thank you.
So I'm Brenda Davis. I'm a Senior Assurance Manager for Devon Audit Partnership. Unfortunately, your normal Internal Audit Manager, Paul Middlemass, is double booked today. So as I live relatively near in Plymouth, I've offered to come along, and that was pleasure as much as work, because some years ago I did manage the Internal Audit Service for West Devon and South Hams, and I loved it. So it was a great opportunity to come back and see old friends.
Well, it's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you, Chair. This is the proposed internal audit plan for 2023-24 for your comment and review. Members should consider if there are any other audit subjects that you would want specific assurance on. To inform the plan, the Council's risk register has been considered, and it has been discussed with the senior management team, who have made sensible revisions. Underpinning the plan for next year is a 4-year plan to support periodic review of all core areas, which is not shown here. The days provided are indicative. Internal audit will use their discretion to undertake more or less days on specific areas based on what they find. The overall number of days being undertaken is about the same as this year. So finally, Chair, the report recommendation is that the proposed internal audit plan for 2023-24 at Appendix A be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. I'll hand over to yourself, Brenda, to present your side of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the plan is quite self-explanatory, and Councillor Edmonds has given us a good introduction into it. On page 21 of the report, it actually provides members with a rough sort of breakdown of the spread of resources across directorate areas, because that's really important, that we spread our resources and the work that we do to provide that statutory head of internal audit opinion at the end of the year. I'd also like to raise that the Shared Prosperity Fund, which is £13.5 million of grant funding, we've got, and for which West Devon is the accountable body. So to just highlight that, we've included that time in the audit plan to look at that. We've already obtained copies of the grant determination and understand what conditions of grant have to be followed in order for us to give that sign-off. So just to give members that assurance, we're aware of that. I think everything is fairly self-explanatory. You'll find in the Appendix A where those areas in the risk register that correspond with items in the audit plan. It's shown in red, so it highlights quite well. And as we go through the year, the landscape for local authorities, I mean, it's changing rapidly, and there doesn't seem to be anything that's going to stop. So this is a plan as it is at this point in time, but clearly we liaise all the time with officers. We come to audit committees, so if members have got concerns, if there are new and emerging risks, then the plan will be flexed to accommodate that. and any changes to the audit plan will be brought back to this committee for sort of information and approval. So I think that's really all I need to say, but happy to take any questions if members have got any. And I've got my colleague, Julie Hopley on the audit team is joining us remotely and who can also support.
Thank you, Brenda, and welcome, Julie. Members, any questions or comments? Councillor Davis, I thought you might.
No, I'm quite happy with the report. I just thought I'd follow on from the previous agenda item, and just on the basis you're both looking at the same pool of qualified people. I mean, Councillor Ball and I both sit on the Devon Audit partnership, so we've got a meeting on Thursday, haven't we? So we could ask it then. But then, as far as you know, how's your members of staff? You're not going to run out of staff in the course of the year or anything?
Through you, Chair. Yes, well, we find the same, really. When we've advertised for jobs, there isn't a great pool of people out there coming in to take those jobs. So we've been, as Jackson has said, looking at how we can grow our own. And we've got a number of apprenticeships within Devon Audit Partnership. So we can bring young people in, get them qualified, doing the on-the-job experience, and hopefully bringing them up through the organisation. We've also recruited people into the partnership who have got what we would call transferable skills, but not necessarily accountancy or internal audit background, from some quite differing areas in the private sector, not necessarily even public sector, but it's looking and thinking more widely of how you can bring them in, how you can train them up. And we're happy with what we've got. We've made some really good appointments, but certainly concur the market is challenging.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda, because it's well worth checking that, because obviously we've got our own staff who are qualified and know what they're doing. And then obviously the backup is actually the internal audit, making sure that they definitely know what they're doing. Then we have the external audit. So at least if there may be delays in the external audit, at least we have some assurance that the internal audit are going to pick something up.
Yeah, that's a good question.
But if both end up struggling with staff, then that'd be one of the risk factors, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If I could also say, we've got two brilliant members of staff on the team, and they've got years of experience between them, and I can't. It's difficult to say. I mean, they're great. If they left, it would be devastating. But you've got two people who work pretty much solely for the authorities. It's supplemented. Some aspects it might be supplemented by other members of the broader DAP team, but you're in a very good position for internal audit.
Yeah, thank you for that. Sorry, was it Councillor Ridges? Sorry.
Yes.
Microphone, because of the TV.
I'm going to echo my previous point. It's just when I'm looking through this, and this is probably pretty much a fait accompli, because look at all the colours and the lines and the numbers and what you've done, but I just look through like grounds maintenance, car parking, corporate governance, culture and ethics. We did that in 16, 17. Do we need to do it in 3 years? And it probably has been pushed out. And I was just minded to look through this and think, do we need to be doing all these audits so regularly? And is there an opportunity where we can push it back for the sake of your team, your resources, while still being reasonably compliant? Obviously, things like fraud, yes, do that every year, absolutely. But there's some in this, electoral registration. Well, that's probably something we need to do quite soon because of the changes. But members' allowances, that might not change. Some seems lighter touch on the risk, and others heavier. And I was just wondering, for your own sake, when we do look at this, when you do look at this for the councils in future years, just stretching the time really to, and then therefore, if we do have any problems, we can encounter, we can cope with them. But yeah, same point as before, really.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Ridges. Just to add to that, I had a note down here about, are there any specific concerns that you might have, and therefore that have been added to the list to look at. But I think the reverse, which is I think is what Councillor Ridges is saying, is also true. Are the things that you have no concern of at all that therefore could come out, or is there a commitment, a bit like we were saying earlier on, that all of these things have to be done every year?
Not everything has to be done every year, so there is a 4-year plan. Members, we can provide you with that 4-year plan if you want. And what you will see in the audit plan is some areas are done annually. So that is all the key financial systems which actually feed into the accounts, and it's where your money's coming in and going out of the organisation. And we do that annually for every client. We think that's best practice. There are other areas that are in a 4-year cyclical sort of cycle. We can share, we're happy to share that 4-year plan with members. We can have conversations if there are areas within that 4-year plan, maybe that there's something that should be included that's not there, or perhaps something that could drop off that plan. But having said that, when we develop the audit plan every year, there is conversations with SLT members. But, you know, we're very happy to take on board any comments and input you might have to that.
Thank you, Brendan. Yes, Councillor. Is there any other comments? I know Councillor Ridge is very keen to move on, but I don't want to stop other people from having a comment if they wish to do so. Otherwise, we'll pick up Councillor Ridge's haste. Everybody happy? Then we need to actually formally vote this one. So I'm happy to. Councillor Ridge has proposed. I'll second. Can we vote that we approve the? Yeah. Thank you.
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy. Okay, so that's item 6. Item 7, Councillor Edmonds, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, this is the standard internal audit update for the committee. Members will note that the head of internal audit is considering providing a reasonable assurance for the year-end report. This is underpinned by the 7 substantial, 5 reasonable and 2 limited assurance reports made to date. Members will note that there are substantial, reasonable and limited assurance reports summarised in the report. Of specific interest for this committee is the risk management report, which notes the good arrangements in place. It will be further improved by review of the risk management strategy and by inclusion of risks as part of service plans from April. The 2 limited reports are on building maintenance and procurement. The building maintenance is the 2nd consecutive report identifying issues as there has not been much progress made since the last audit. Based on conversations with the 2 senior managers, internal audit is now confident that a good priority is being placed on resolving the identified issues. On procurement, the limited expert resource available to the Council is challenging, as it is key to achieving long-term value for money from procurement activity, and also on ensuring compliance with rules and regulations. The report also notes the progress being made to conclude the audit plan. Despite one of the auditors being allocated to grant work over much of the period, there has been good progress. The grant work has largely been completed, and the intention remains to meet the core targets of 90% of the audit plan. And the report recommendation, Chair, is that the progress made against the 2022-23 internal audit plan and any key issues arising are noted and approved.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Brenda, do you want to make any comments from your side?
Chair, I think the progress report is pretty much self-explanatory. As Councillor Edmonds has highlighted, there's 2 areas of limited assurance. The one around procurement is more challenging to address in terms of sort of resourcing, and because at the moment the procurement service is shared with Teambridge Council. With regards to the work around the building maintenance, we are confident that steps and progress will be made, but there are things to be done, and we've actually allowed 10 days in the audit plan next year to actually go back and revisit that in some detail to make sure that management actions are actually being implemented and we can bring the assurance back to this committee. Other than that, progress is really to the plan as expected. But if you've got any specific questions, either myself or Julie would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Brenda. I mean, for me, obviously these two were the ones I drew to because of the limited assurance. But I think what pleases me when you look at the report is the priority recommendations that are made for both items are exactly the sort of things I would, ask to be considered. And I know that for the building maintenance works, the one that Brenda was just talking about there, that we've already taken on some extra staff to pick up some of the sort of slack on that. So although obviously we want to see them go green, I think there are good plans to take both of those items forward. Councillor Evans, did you want to come back?
Well, just as a footnote to that, Chair, is that a new head of operations has been appointed within the assets team, I understand, and there is an action plan in place, and that is being monitored by Mr. Molyneux and Mr. Brooke at director level. So I think there are really good actions and plans in place to improve the performance across the assets team.
Thank you. That's really helpful information, and I think we're all be pleased with that. I think the procurement one is probably a little bit more challenging, but I guess as we go forward, that will be in the report, and that can be monitored, and as we head into the new. I say we, whoever's here in the new council. Anybody else want to make any comment on that particular item? No? Happy to note, members? Thank you. Thank you for that, guys. Okay, so where are we now? Item 8. Thank you, Vice Chair. Funny, sorry, bear with me, guys. There we go.
Chair, we might have a strategic risk on health and well-being if I don't get a glass of water. Is that all right?
Members, do you want to take a 5-minute break? Because we have been going for an hour and 20 minutes. Do you want a 5-minute break, comfort break? Could we suspend the Okay, members, we'll recommence, and I think we're on agenda item 8. Who's leading on this one? Councillor Edmonds?
That's me, Chair. Thank you. So these 3 strategies are required to be presented annually to Council for approval and set out the Council's capital limits, borrowing limits, and where the Council will invest its money on an annual basis. Members will recall that Treasury Management training for members was arranged for the 22nd of March 2021, where the key points of the annual strategies were discussed. And this will be arranged again in the late summer 2023. The capital strategy at Appendix A sets out details of the Council's projected capital expenditure plans, which include the development of a new railway station and integrated transport hub on the eastern edge of Oakhampton, following the Council's successful bid for government funding of £13.4 million. The Borough Council will be the accountable body for the capital project, and the estimated capital expenditure has been profiled over the next 3 financial years. The capital strategy also sets out details of the capital financing requirement, which is the measure of the Council's underlying need to borrow for the capital programme, which is a maximum of £24 million for 23-24. And this includes borrowing for leisure, Wastefleet, Kilworthy Park, Spring Hill, and for investment properties. The strategy set out a position at a point in time and are based on the 2023-24 capital programme approved by Council in February 2023. These 3 strategies can be revised at any point during the financial year. The Council is proposing to continue to invest its money in banks and building societies within the UK, which is set out within the Treasury Management Strategy. The strategy in Appendix B also sets out the minimum revenue position, or MRP, policy statement. The MRP is the capital repayment of any borrowing. The operational boundary is recommended to be set at £35 million to reflect the current projected levels of borrowing, and the authorised limit is recommended to be set at £50 million. Finally, Chair, the report recommendations are that the Audit Committee scrutinises and recommends to Council the approval of the 3 strategies for 23-24 as set out in the appendices, and that delegated authority be given to the Section 151 officer in consultation with the Leader of the Council and the Hub Committee member for Finance to make any minor amendments to these strategies if required throughout the 2023-24 financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Lisa, did you want to make any comments from side, officer side of things?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just as Councillor Edmonds has said, these 3 strategies will go to the Council meeting at the beginning of April. They come to the Audit and Governance Committee first-hand for scrutiny of both the figures and what's contained within the strategy. Largely, this obviously just reflects what's in the Council's capital programme and the capital projects that we monitor on a regular basis. In terms of Treasury Management, there is we're very much recommending that we continue as normal, investing in banks and building societies within the UK. We do also have a smaller investment in the CCLA. In terms of Treasury Management income, that's looking very healthy for us at the moment. And in terms of the budget that we have set for next year, the budget for investment income has been set at 400,000. So yes, in terms of what happens on Treasury Management, in Mrs Henstock's team, we have a member of staff who looks at Treasury Management on a daily basis and looks at the Council's cash balances, looks at the bank accounts. We do some very detailed cash flow analysis, and then we invest out with UK banks and building societies, whether that's for a period of a year, 6 months, 3 months, or it can just be 1 month. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. I mean, the treasury management and the treasury management and the investment strategies pretty much stay. You know, there's slight changes around, but they're pretty much a standard. You know, we kind of know what to expect on those. Obviously, the capital strategy is the one that probably changes the most, or potentially can change the most. And obviously, we have to comment on the transport hub funding. When Councillor Admins was doing his introduction, Councillor Yellen to my right was going. We're obviously delighted with to receive the funding for the transport hub, which is going to make make the Dartmoor line, which is already proved to be successful, even more successful. And of course, the main benefit will be it will give easier access, especially for those who live outside of the town. So everybody in the borough potentially will benefit from this investment. I have a question. I suspect it'll probably to yourself, Lisa, around this. Obviously, the money's come to us because it's a district level funding underneath the Levelling Up Fund. But obviously, Devon County Council are the transport strategy authority, so therefore, they have all the expertise and experience in delivering capital projects around rail, particularly. And I know it's a partnership. That's very clear. I guess from an audit perspective, I don't know how to ask the question, but are we going to lead the project, or will DCC lead it, and we're responsible for just, writing the checks when they're needed out of the funding? Because obviously, we're responsible for the funding, and Brenda mentioned earlier on about there's an internal audit aspect around this, and obviously we need to make sure that everything is being done. And again, like my comment earlier on, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody else. This is about risk management, I guess. How do we have an idea of how this is going to work? Yeah, are we going to be leading the project, or is it going to be a partnership, or a DCC leading the project from the delivery point of view, and we're writing the checks? How's it going to work? Because I have a follow-up question depending on what you say.
Thank you, Chair. So the Borough Council is the accountable body. So in terms of who signs the grant determination letter, that is myself as the Section 151 officer of the Borough Council. So ultimate responsibility for that project sits with us. In terms of how will it practically work, obviously this is a partnership project with Devon County. As you say, Devon County are the transport authority. So the way we envisage that working is that all of the procurement will be done by the County Council, and the procuring of the works and the overseeing of that works will be done by the county. And then we will facilitate payments to the county on the basis of when they start paying expenditure out. We have got what's called an inception meeting, which is a meeting between us, Devon County, and the government officials for the Levelling Up Fund, which is happening this week. And we will find out more detail around exactly how the project will work from that inception meeting with government officials. There will be quite a bit of monitoring to do. So we, the finance team, will be responsible for submitting those monitoring returns. We have got a lady, Claire Scotland, on the call today. Claire is our capital accountant. So we will be liaising with our colleagues, our capital accounting colleagues at county, to submit those returns on a regular basis. So yes, the majority of the spend, and I think you can see this probably on page 77 of the report, will sit in the 24-25 financial year. So in this financial year, there will be a lot of the preparatory work, whereas a large part of that spend will start from 24-25. Because it is such a significant capital project, being over 13 million, I requested that it went on the internal audit plan. So when Brenda was saying that the plan has had input from SLT, I did ask that it went on the plan so that we've got that internal audit view of how we are administering the scheme. But obviously the upshot is all of that expenditure will go through the council's financial ledger. And the accountable body status does mean that we have ultimate responsibility for that project. But yes, it very much is a partnership project, and we will be working very closely with our accounting colleagues at Devon. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I mean, it's obviously a very important project for us all. Obviously, particularly for those of us who live close by. But I think, as I mentioned earlier on, it's a really important project for us as an authority, actually, and to be successful in that, a lot of credit needs to be given. I know the leader and Councillor Yellem were involved in that, and yourselves. I think it's a tremendous achievement, really, and there'll be a lot of public interest in this, as it particularly as things I'll start. Careful, go down my railway puns, but as it starts building steam, I think, again, a bit like I said earlier on for the other projects, it's one that I think future audit committee will need to sort of stay on top of. But I'm reassured, it's on the internal audit plan, so it will be there front and centre, and I think that's really important that, some of the larger public infrastructure projects are going not too well at the moment. We don't want that happening on a local level, albeit it's a lot smaller than that. We want this to be run well and delivered properly at the end of the day, so we can celebrate that, when it comes forward. So, members, sorry, I appreciate it, but all right, that was close. I'll go to Councillor Ridges first.
We're allowed to ask some. It's just Treasury Management comments.
Please do. Yeah, we're covering all three.
Okay. I've just noticed on page 84, we are short term. We have 17.2 million on short term fixed. It says here at 1.91%, and then page 89 says the bank rate's at 4%. So that's what is short term, because we seem to be behind on the bank rate on this. And also my other question is, where is the feeling if the bank rate's 4%, where the Public Works and Loan Board's rate will be, because it's 2.54% at the end of January, and will that be going up? Because I look at this and what are our investments and our borrowings, and we're borrowing in charges 2.54, and we're investing in sort of roughly under 2, and there's an imbalance there, and it's just a bit concerning because of the size of the figures.
Thank you, Chair. So the majority of the borrowing that the Borough Council has was taken out, some of it was taken out in 2019 and 2020. So that was our latest borrowing. That was historic borrowing. And at the time, we entered into fixed rate interest rates on those. So the borrowing that we're paying on that PWLB debt is fixed. It doesn't change with base rate. And those were investments that we entered into primarily. Some of those was to purchase investment properties. In terms of where do we think PWLB rates will go in the future, I think there is a chart from Link Services, who are our Treasury Management advisors, I'm just trying to find
Page
a
87,
copy
I think,
of that.
Lisa.
Thank you. Yes, on page 87. So they are so at the moment PWLB rates are very high. They're the highest they have been certainly for at least 10 years. So at the moment, PWLB rates this morning actually are around about 4.5%. So a lot higher than the debt that we entered into back in 2018, 2019. So in that respect, the debt that we looked into at a fixed rate was good value for money for the council because those rates are now much higher. In terms of where will those rates go in the future, I think on that chart on page 87, they are predicting to start come back down, and I think Link are saying by sort of March 26 they could be down to 3.1%. So the fact that we've entered into fixed rate borrowing means that we know exactly how much we've got to budget for on a year-by-year basis. I think what we've benefited from is the fact that base rates have now gone up to 4%. At the time we set our budget, those bank base rates were around 0.1. So we now think that we will get around £500,000 of treasury management income, whereas the budget was only 25,000. And what we've been able to do is to look into some longer term rates. So we've looked into some one-year rates. We've got very attractive interest rates on. We've still got some of our longer term investments in the CCLA, but we do still keep the majority of our investments short term, so mainly for 3 months, 6 months or 9 months. Only a small proportion of the portfolio do we lock in for a year or more. Now, we could lock a higher proportion of our investments in longer term, but we're very wary of doing that, and I think certainly when the pandemic hit, one of the things that was of comfort to us was that we hadn't tied our investments up longer term. We were able to access our cash and investments very quickly because we had that liquidity. So there's always a balance, but very much we've kept it so that the majority of our investments are shorter term rather than longer term. And we do benchmark ourselves against other Link Services clients, and we're about in the middle, I would say. We're not some of the high achievers, but then we're not at the lower end either. But with higher interest rates comes higher risk. Thank you.
Can I just come back quickly? I suppose the point I'm making is that we are borrowing at 2.54 aggregated, and then we're probably, I don't know what if you did a weighted average of that, of what we're investing in, it's probably less than 2.54. So it's just looking at those short-term fixed money market funds and the CCLA. I think the key issue, we've got 17 million at short-term. It's what is short-term? Because if hopefully it is very short-term, then we can reinvest, because if bank rates are 4%, then we should be getting a lot more than the 1.91. But I understand that was probably locked in, and this is 3.2.1 on page 84. And admittedly, that was probably locked in whether it's a year ago or so. But it's slightly out of kilter where we're paying more for our borrowing than we are on our investment, and we have similar pots of money, 27, 28 million. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And as you say, that those rates would have been looked in well before base rates increased as fast as they did. So yes, mainly, as I say, we keep the majority of it short term. Some of that will only be for a month. So if we are paying Devon County, one of our preceptors, and the police and the fire, we will keep money on short term because we generally get income from council tax around about the middle of the month, and then we are paying our preceptors at the end of the month. So sometimes we've got money invested short term, sort of 2-3 weeks, ready to meet our precepting obligations. But yes, in terms of how we're doing against the benchmark, if the base rate is around about 4%, we're generally achieving just slightly higher than that on a sort of average weighted interest rate.
All right, but we says we're doing 1.91% on the Treasury short-term fixed.
Page is this?
3.2.1. Am I running in the wrong?
3.2.1.
Is that all borrowing? Treasury investments, isn't that?
That is our short term. That was the position back in January.
Okay.
So that's what
not
we were
borrowing.
achieving
That's
back
investments.
in January. Yeah, short term investments.
Yeah, but that's investment. So just conscious that hopefully that will start improving.
Yes, it will. So that figure, when we get to the end of the year, as you say, will be a lot higher, because though that will be based on investments that we might have done back in the summer of 22, and the winter of 22, before base rates really started increasing at the rate that they did.
Okay, noted.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take us back to the levelling up money. I do remember a few years ago when I was chairman of Oak Rail, there was a contingent of us went to see a government minister, the Minister of Transport, and he said, I remember his words quite clearly, those of us there, when Councillor Ball was there as well, there's a few of us went, and then he did say to me that the railway line is a possibility in our lifetime, but the transport hub in our lifetime just won't happen. So I'm pleased to know that everybody, including the government minister, is still alive, and it is happening in our lifetime. But it gets me to the key point is that out of the 13.4 million, we're going to spend a lot of time on that, aren't we? You mentioned that, Lisa. You have to spend a lot of time. Claire Scott's has to spend a lot of time on this. Do we get any payment for the time that we spend on it?
Unfortunately not, no. That is something that we looked at when we put the bid in. There is some general sort of project management time in there, but that would be more for project management on the ground, I think. Actually, you know, delivering the station. So we can't sort of claim our sort of finance time, if you like, on that.
Let's just follow up then, Chair, because it is a little bit worrying, because we are stretched, really, with all our staff resources, and it is a wonderful thing that we've got 13.4 million for the area, for the transport hub. But out of that, we're going to have to spend more time administering it, but we're going to not get a penny for it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think probably it's the same for our county colleagues. We are hoping that the majority of the financial accounting will be taken up by our county colleagues, and that we will just be passporting the money through to the county. That's how we envisage the project working. But it's, you know, it's the same as when we were the accountable body for the Tamar Valley mining heritage. At the end of the day, the administering authority does have the ultimate responsibility. So that will be the Borough Council.
I think that's a good point. I'll come to you second, Councillor Yellen. Thank you. There's a good point. I think I don't think you're absolutely right to bring it up, Councillor Davies, but I guess I'm partly reassured that it is on the internal audit, and therefore, by definition, recognised as a risk, potential risk. And I think as we go forward, you know, that's monitored, and you know, if we're seeing that there's a potential conflict, is perhaps the wrong word, but you know, time issue in regards to personnel, then maybe that is something we can address nearer the time. But I think it's a valid point to raise. Yes, okay. Did you want to come back on that specifically?
Yeah, so basically, we take the whole responsibility for having the money, and then we have extra, you know, because I know, yes, the Devon Audit Partnership will do the internal audit and look into it, but that's less time they have to look into something else. It just seems amazing out of all this money, we carry the responsibility. It all goes pear-shaped, but we get not a penny for it. That's what I believe it is.
Fair point. Councillor Yellen.
Yeah, I did actually just want to respond really from a maybe slightly different perspective, is that yes, we are carrying the administrative burden. It is sort of part of the service to our community and the wider economic benefit of the transport hub and the positive impact that will have. And eventually, one would hope, you know, encouraging other businesses into the area because of the links, which would increase business rates. So while we don't actually necessarily get the business rates, or we don't keep the business rates, we collect it, we don't keep it, but essentially it's part of, to my mind, it's part of what we're doing as our service, if you like, to the community. And I appreciate that it is putting an extra strain on our finance team, but I think the benefit certainly outweighs it. That's just what I want to pick that up.
Yeah, I think, certainly the three of us have been involved in those conversations over the years in regards to, the benefit that the Dartmoor line will bring to the community. And as I said earlier, not just Oakhampton, but the wider borough. And I think the comments that Councillor Yelland has made are absolutely on the money. Again, excuse the pun. The railway a new railway always brings an uplift, and we're seeing that in the community in ways already, and one would hope as things start to improve, and I know we've had other factors which has suppressed certain things, which hasn't helped, but the success of the line stands head and shoulders. I mean, over 250,000 journeys in the first 12 months, bearing in mind that half that time it was only 2 hourly, is a fantastic achievement. And certainly when the Parkway station's built, that number will increase. I'm convinced of it, and it will become attractive. And I do know one of the businesses on that business park, came to Oakhampton on the hope of the railway line coming, because they do lots of business up up country, and it was a way of bringing people down for business meetings, and they're going to benefit from that, particularly when the new station's built. So I think we all recognise the positives. Coming back, obviously as an authority, we need to make sure that we keep on top of the process that we're responsible for, and I think those are the points that Councillor Davies has made and I made earlier, and Councillor Yelland alluded to. So, yes, Councillor Edmonds, did you want to come
just
back?
to add to that point, of course, there will be a partnership board in place as well for the project with other partners, so that that is another way of ensuring that the project is on track.
I get your points. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Richards, do you want to come back on that? Can you put your microphone on, please, Councillor Richards?
Microphone.
It's a question I want to ask regarding our investment portfolio in property going forward. Are we restricted now to invest within Devon or West Devon? Can we move wider than that? Because I will note, members, if you look at 3.2.2, page 85, where we've made the capital investment, it's been outside of the area as opposed to being in it. And it's just a concern going forward.
The current guideline is that it is investment within the borough.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, could you knock your microphone? Thank you, Councillor Richards. Any other comments on this, or are we happy with this? Is this a noting or a formal proposal?
It's a proposal for council to go to council.
Well, I'm happy to propose that. Can I have a seconder? Vice Chair seconds. Members, we're happy to vote.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Cathy. Thank you, members. Let's move on then to item 9, which is the budget book. And again, Councillor Edmonds, I believe you're leading on this.
Thank you. Yes, Chair, that's right. Thank you. This is an annual report considered by the Audit Committee. The report sets out the Council's revenue budget for 2023-24 and is split between the 4 directorates of Customer Service and Delivery, Place and Enterprise, Governance and Assurance, and Strategic Finance. The budget book compares the detail of the budget for 2022-23 against the budget for 23-24 and provides a clear audit trail of all the movements in terms of the cost pressures and savings which were set out in the medium-term financial strategy and agreed as part of the 2023-24 budget process. The budget book also shows any environments within 22-23. An environment is where a budget is moved from one budget holder to another to better reflect where budget responsibility should be held. Environments always net to zero, In the budget book, salary costs for business support staff have been reallocated into their respective service delivery teams, as the heads of service are now responsible for both specialist and business support salary budgets within their service areas. A environment which nets to zero has been put through to reflect this. In addition, various minor presentational changes have been made to the 2023-24 budget, shown in the other adjustments column in the budget book. And these adjustments net to zero as they are purely presentational. And the recommendation on the report is just to note the contents of the budget book for 23-24.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Pauline, did you want to make any comments?
Thank you, Chair. Not particularly. I think Councillor Evans has summed up exactly what the report is about. It is just an annual report, and the figures agree to the medium-term financial strategy and the budget that was approved at full council in February. So this really is the detail behind that to make sure it's an accurate presentation of the budget for 23-24.
Thank you. Councillor Yelland.
Thank you. I just think this does need to be noted. I'm aware this is noted, it's all been approved, but on page 112, we are under the draft-based revenue budget, the second up from the bottom, which is cost centre, is WT 400, I think, with my glasses. Public conveniences. We are still budgeting 121,749 on public conveniences, when it includes an additional cost pressure of 3,450 from the previous financial year, when I know in 2019 this council agreed that public conveniences, apart from Princetown, I understand there were specific circumstances, were actually all going to be offered to the town and parishes for them to take on the responsibility going forward. So I am just a little confused why we have this large sum of money being budgeted for when actually we shouldn't actually be paying that out. It should now be met at a local level. Thank you.
So, through you, Chairman, the additional pressure that would be around utilities costs. So within the budget, we did budget for 150,000 cost pressure for utilities and inflation. And what we're seeing is particularly the cost of utilities are, you know, in some instances it's 150% higher than we were paying in the previous financial year. Also within that cost centre, we have got staff salaries of staff that administer the public conveniences or work in that service. So some of that 3,450 would also be attributed to the pay award for staff salaries as well.
I'll come back to you. The whole point is we shouldn't be paying out anything on public conveniences. They should have all been either passed across as per the council decision, or the alternative was they were going to be closed. So which public conveniences are still being funded through West Devon? Councillor, I mean, I appreciate you probably wouldn't know the answer to this, and I'm not expecting you to, because I mean that's probably a different route. But I think I do want to raise to this committee that my concerns that actually it is still being funded when this council made the decision not to fund it any longer. So I think we need to. And as you say, you know, the cost pressures, this is what has been also faced by the towns and parishes who have picked these up and are precepting it for it themselves, plus the residents are precepting for whichever public toilets these are as well, which doesn't seem terribly fair. So, thank you.
Chairman, could I suggest that we provide the committee with a written response on that outside of the meeting? Thank you.
Yeah. Is there potentially a part 2 aspect to that then? Or?
I don't think so, Chairman. But
okay, yeah. No, but I think obviously you need to find out the details. So I think it's a fair question to be asked. Councillor Ridges, yeah.
Question. These are revisions in the in-year budget. When have you taken the costs up to? Are they to the end of January or the end of December to make, is this a final quarter analysis? So have you analysed the costs, for example, up to December in this current financial year, and therefore you're making recommendations of the budget changes on the last quarter, or is it from January? It just doesn't say so.
So it would be the most up-to-date information we would have had when we prepared the budget. So as at the end of January.
As at the end of January. So it's been done in February. Okay, so we've got 10 months worth of expenditure costs or whatever when we before we look at the amendments. Not as a I'm not holding you to a...
No. But obviously here we're looking at the budget for the whole year for 23-24. So we're looking forward in terms of 23-24, and we're just building up really to inform members of where we started for the base budget of 22-23 and moving forward to get to the final position for 23.
Largely based on 10 months costs throughout the year to make that adjustment. Could I also recommend, I know this is for noting as well, but for future reports, could we have a table of what I would call material differences in some of these headings? Because it's huge, it's enormous. It is important for this committee to go and look through. But for example, where we've got significant budget headings, maybe over 100,000, where there have been material changes, if that was pulled out into a separate table, I think that would help members for future years.
I think I know the material changes will just be the medium-term financial strategy. So the rest of it are minor presentational changes. Apart from, obviously, Councillor Evans referred to the changes for the salaries, so where we've moved the presentation where before we had a business manager model, so the business manager managed all the specialist salaries, for example, and what we've done as part of this process is move the specialist salaries back to the relevant head of service. So there has been a lot of changes this year.
And that would cover a lot of the material changes.
Yes, absolutely, but yes, of course we can look at doing that. That's not a problem at all.
Okay, that would be great, because just noting one up from Councillor Yellen's point is car and boat parking. We thought we'd be getting 605,000 in, and I think, look, there's a significant budget change for next year, is that we're only going to get £420,000 worth of income, but that's probably not ours anyway, is it? It's probably Southam's when it comes to boating, or is that again covered in salaries?
Chairman, I think the majority of these movements would have been in the budget report that went to Council in February. So that budget report would have shown that we are reducing car parking by 150,000. But based on the levels of income that we're seeing at the moment. So our income target for car parking is just under £1 million, and we've reduced that in the budget process to 850,000. Yes, we could produce something showing the material changes, but it would just be the budget report. But we could put a table of, say, the top 10 highest.
Exactly.
Ones,
it would just,
for example, we could put that in the covering report.
I think it would be helpful, particularly again we've referred to it a number of times. Obviously, potentially going to have new members within the committee after May. I think it would be helpful for understanding to see that information in tabular form. It makes it easier then to focus on the things that do need to be focused on. So I think it's a good suggestion. Yes, Councillor Edmonds.
Well, I'll just add to that, as Mrs. Buckle has said, that is reported through the financial year on the revenue budget monitoring report. Where there are variances, plus or minus, and also that follows into a management action plan as well, as part of that report where there are significant variances, and that action plan, I think, is for car parking and other areas. It says just that the budget will be reduced to whatever figure it is. So that kind of gives the background, the context, if you liked, the reasoning for that particular budget figure being brought forward into next year's budget book. So there is that audit trail, if you like, that's been created throughout the year through that monitoring report, which goes into Hub on a quarterly basis. Thank
you. Members, if you could turn your mic off when you've finished. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Richards. it's a valid point, but I think the point that Councillor Ridge has made, and obviously he'll correct me if I'm wrong. I think, you know, for the sake of the audit committee, I think it would be helpful just to see that again, because obviously we have responsibility to review that within the role of the audit committee. I don't think it's a criticism of what's gone on. It's just making the report easier to process. And obviously, we want to focus on the things that have changed, particularly because there might be relevant questions relating to that. So I think I support the comment that Councillor Ridges has said, but note what you've said, Councillor Edmonds. It's a perfectly reasonable response. But perhaps we'll leave that out there for the officers to work on. Any other comments on budget book 23-24? No? I think we note this. Yeah, members happy to note? Noted. Thank you very much. Okay. We're getting there. Item 10. Again, Councillor Edmonds, you're leading on this shared services methodology.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Well, this is an annual report considered by the Audit Committee which reviews the apportionment of cost, predominantly staffing costs, between West Devon Borough Council and South Hams District Council. Each year, the shared services splits are reviewed based on the latest caseload data available. For example, the total cost of the housing benefits team is shared based on the number of new housing benefit claims and the change of circumstances processed in each council. Our external auditors, Grant Thornton, have identified the share of cost between West Devon and South Hams as a key risk area, and it is given high prominence throughout the year, and particularly during closure of accounts. The review of shared services splits will create a reduction in staffing costs for West Devon of £85,500 in 2022-23, which equates to 1.9% of the council's total salary budget. This mainly reflects the changes in apportionment from bringing the waste service back in-house in South Hams from the 3rd of October 2022. There's been a lower allocation of salary cost to West Devon in 2022-23 from the service areas of waste, senior leadership team time, the HR team, the finance team, additional payroll and payment of invoices, the legal team, and the design team. Some of this reduction is a one-off in 2022-23 associated with bringing the waste service back in-house in South Hams. There has been a higher recharge to West Devon for the apportionment of staff salaries from planning enforcement and environmental health, disabled facilities grants, in 2022-23 due to the caseloads that have been dealt with in each council area. West Devon will therefore incur a higher salary cost apportionment in these two service areas. And the recommendation, Chair, is that the Audit and Governance Committee notes the methodology of the shared service apportionment of cost between West Devon and South Hams for 22-23 as attached in Appendix A.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Is it you, Pauline? Yeah. Pauline, did you want to make any further comments? I've got a question, but I'll let you say something first if you wish to.
No, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Edmonds has summed it up nicely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I just want to be clear. I think I know the answer, but I just want to be clear. So the 85,500, that's the bottom line saving, taking into account that we've got an increase in some areas of staffing. Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that is correct. That 85,500 is a net figure, taking into account all the movements between the two councils.
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you. Members, any questions or comments? No? Lisa, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just wondered if we'd like to invite Mr. Murray to talk about the work that the audit team do on the shared service with recharges, because it is something that they audit on an annual basis for both councils. Thank you.
I think Mr. Murray will welcome an opportunity to speak without getting a hard time. Jackson, do you want to?
Thanks, through you, Chair. You haven't heard what I'm going to say yet. So this is a slight peculiarity in that because of the shared services, this isn't a test or an area that we would look at every local authority audit, as you'll appreciate. What we tend to do is do the work once for both authorities. So as you understand, we undertake sample testing. We don't look at every transaction, but using this as an agreed methodology, should it be agreed by the council, it went to the audit committee at Southams last week as well. We would select a sample of transactions going either way and ensure that they have been allocated as appropriate based on the apportionment methodology. The methodology has been in place for a number of years. It's brought to committee annually to show you the changes to those cost drivers, which is the approval that is sought. And then we ensure that the financial statements of both entities properly reflect either the costs or the income cross-charging, to ensure that there's no, I suppose, cross-subsidisation from one council to another from this accounting treatment.
So basically what you're saying is that you check that transactions are in the right cost code and applied to the correct authority in proportion to whatever's been done, because obviously there are some services that will have a 60-40 or a 30-70 split, and that's what you're checking, is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So as you'll appreciate, there's a lot of staff costs in there, so we're looking to ensure that the right apportionment percentages have been applied if it's an invoice or a good or service that's been apportioned the same. So it's ensuring that the methodology is consistent, because ultimately this is an estimate, isn't it? It's an apportionment of cost, so we're ensuring that's being done consistently and as we'd expect.
Thank you, that's really a really helpful explanation. Councillor Ridges, yeah.
No, there's only a comment on that. I looked at it and the figures, and they, yes, in terms of applications and things like that, it seemed entirely fair, actually. It seemed a very good, solid basis to move on. Just to note. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think as we said earlier on, I think the team deserve our thanks and congratulations, really, because I can imagine it's not a common situation in the way that we run things in a shared service. So I can imagine that making sure that the correct percentages and all the rest of it are applied. So I think I'd like to thank you guys for all your hard work. As Councillor Ridges said, it's an excellent report, and I think the external auditor would have made a comment if there was any concerns about that, and he didn't do so. Any other comments, members? No? Then happy to note. Yep, noted. Thanks, appreciate that. And please pass on our thanks to your teams as well. Okay, 11. For a change, it's Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And let's go back to Treasury Management. So this report gives an update on the Council's Treasury position as at the 30th of September 2022. The Treasury Management strategy is risk-averse, with no investments allowed for a period of more than a year, and a very high credit rating is required, together with a limit of £3 million per counterparty. So as at the 30th September, the Council achieved an investment interest rate of 1.21% against the industry benchmark of 1.19%. And I think, as we've heard already today, the budget for investment interest in 2022-23 is £25,000. However, as interest rates have increased during the year, the current forecast for investment interest is £585,000, which will exceed the budget by almost £560,000. At the end of September last year, the council held 27.9 million of investments and a debt portfolio of 28 million. So the report confirms that the council has operated within the prudential indicators agreed by council in April 22, as detailed in Appendix B. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. And we've got Claire Scotton with us on Teams. Claire, did you want to make any comments on this? It's obviously your name on the report. Not there. Claire, are you there? Give her opportunity. Okay. Did either of you want to comment?
Chairman, thank you. Yeah. I mean, this is just one of our. We do a mid-year report every year. This is the one for 22-23. I mean, it's pleasing to be slightly higher than the benchmark. We benchmark ourselves against what we call the SONIA rate, the Sterling Overnight Interbank Average Rate. Yes, and we're very pleased that our current forecast is that our Treasury Management income will exceed £500,000 this year. So, yeah, that's a pleasing result, I think. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think going back to what we were saying earlier on, it's about having that flexibility to move quickly gives us the opportunity to, I guess, take advantage of changes and so on. Members, did you want to make any comments? Councillor Ridges.
The money market funds, are they just judged by an interest rate, or is there any capital return on those?
It is just an interest rate, yeah. We don't get capital returns on.
Okay. I mean, can I make a comment? I mean, if I look over all this, I hope we're catching up, because I don't think we're doing that well at the moment, and in terms of a statement, because we're borrowing at 2.54, and we've got a lot of these older legacy investments at lower rates. Okay, we've achieved the benchmark of over 1.2, but I know it's very, very difficult because we are very restricted. But with we've got probably the more recent fund here, the Lloyds TSB Bank, delivering us 3.32, and I think we need to be on this a lot, especially at the moment with the interest rates high as they are, to maximising this, because the amounts of money we have under management are significant now that we really need to be maxing out on our treasury management income. I know you're looking at it all the time, but this is a great opportunity, I think, to be a really, really good revenue stream for the council. And I would just be minded to, this is something we need to be looking at continually, try and get on as many, or try as investments mature with lower fixed rates, that we're looking to apply them to the new higher fixed rates, because I really think budgeting for 23, 24, we can make some significant returns in this area. It's just a comment I'd like to make.
I think that's an excellent comment. Go on, Councillor Edmonds, you go first.
I think here we're looking back to the 30th of September. So the rates here reflect that position. I know that we have a dedicated member of the finance team who look daily at the market, at rates, and makes calls on moving money around to take advantage, as Councillor Ridges rightly suggests, to make sure we maximise the movements in interest rates and maximise income opportunities. So from my understanding of what takes place within that team, I'd be very confident that we are doing just that. And I think the results of 585,000 forecast for the year would suggest that, that's happening. But I agree with the premise of your question. It's a great opportunity to maximise income, particularly when we look on the other side of the equation and we see other costs rising rapidly with inflation. So we really have to make sure we stay on top of our game to try and head off those increases.
Thank you. Can I just note one point? Yes, I do note that this report was done as at September, and that is, things have changed also rapidly. And also, can I caveat that while my stance is to be progressive, can we also avoid certain banks from America, please?
Silicon
Valley.
I think it's a fair point, well made. I think Councillor Ridge's point is a valid one, and particularly if we are going to see those interest rates come down again, I think we should be trying to maximise where we can. Lisa, did you want to make a further comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just with regard to that, I mean, we set out in our strategy what we feel is the minimum credit rating that we would invest the council's funds with. In our strategies that we just considered on the previous item, we are setting a minimum of AA minus. So we are saying that our priorities are if we invest £1 million, making sure we get that £1 million back. That is our ultimate aim. Security, then liquidity. So how quick can we get our funds back? Security, liquidity, and yield is at the moment our third priority. You can get higher yields, but that will be at the expense of credit rating. As you say, avoiding certain banks and building societies. And I think what we've tried to do with our treasury management strategy is to have the best credit rating, not putting the council's investments at risk. Because I say that the priority is if we make an investment that we get that initial amount back plus interest. We have invested in longer term investments, so we've got some investments with CCLA. Now, you will note we're getting a higher dividend yield with the CCLA, but that is tying the council's investments up for at least 5 years. Those are long-term strategic investments. And the advice that we have always received is that basically don't put more than 10% of the council's investment portfolio with long-term strategic investments, such as the CCLA, because you are tying money in for longer term. And as I say, during the pandemic years, we were very much focusing on cash flow and liquidity because we didn't know, where residents were going to be able to pay their council tax. We still had to pay the precepting authorities, whether we got that money in and collected that money or not. So cash flow risk was a big consideration for us during those years. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That's really helpful. Any other comments, members? No? If not, happy to note. That's noted. Thank you, members. On to item 12. Strategic risk update. Members, you aware that the front page wasn't included initially, but it is attached as a separate item online. So, Leader, did you want to introduce this?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will briefly introduce. The report circulated, members, sets out our risk management processes and objectives, as well as the way that we score those risks and treat them. The strategic risks chart shows 2 risks where over the period the risk was considered to have increased. One revolves around staffing issues, and we're seeking to address this with a recruitment and retention plan, which has now been considered by Hub and Council and has been approved. The other revolves around health and wellbeing leisure service provision. This reflects the increase in costs and the potential reductions in income in an already difficult post-pandemic world arising from the cost of living and energy costs crisis. We continue to work with Fusion Leisure to help them through this situation and to promote active participation in healthy activities. Alongside that, the committee will also note that the Council has performed well in relation to previously identified risks in 2 areas. Our response to the cost of living crisis and risks around the placement of Ukrainian refugees.
In both these instances, the risks have been much reduced, and as a result of the implementation of suitable policies and the provision of appropriate resources. Our suggestion in both these instances, is that the risk has been managed to the extent that they should be de-escalated from the register. Members, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Leader. Neil, did you want to add anything to that from your side?
Nothing to add on the specific risk register itself, Chairman, but just to highlight to members the intention of officers to review our risk and opportunity management strategy, which is set out in the covering report published yesterday. The strategy itself was last adopted in 2018, so we just think it's time to review it. So our intention is we will review that and bring it forward to the next audit committee following the elections in May, followed by some member workshops specifically focused around risk and opportunity management.
I think that's helpful. Thank you. I just wanted to make one comment before I open it up to my colleagues. So under the health and wellbeing provision risk, obviously, as the leader mentioned, there is an inherent risk because of circumstances of the last few years. The comment I'm going to make, I suppose, is more a scrutiny thing, but it has a knock-on effect into the risk rating of things. So for us in Oakhampton, Parklands, swimming pool has been closed for a few days because of some issues, and it's not the first time. And I think issues like that are not helping the risk really. And I'm hopefully scrutiny are sort of paying attention to that, because I believe that they do have a regular report relating to the contract. But I would hope, certainly from our perspective of being concerned around the risks, that those sort of things are being picked up. I don't know, Leader, did you want to respond to that?
Well, it's certainly something that we will be coming back to scrutiny on, and we are staying in close contact with Fusion. We are thinking about alternative plans if we need to go down that route. But one good piece of report, which is hot off the press, we've been lobbying quite hard for additional support through a number of different channels, and I understand that today a new funding pot has been announced worth £63 million to be managed by Sport England, which is going to help leisure centres. So that in itself, I think, is good and very welcome news, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that through overview and scrutiny.
That is good news, and hopefully we'll be able to procure I don't know, around about 60 million of that. That'd be really helpful, I think. No, that's good. Members, anyone want to make any comments related to the risk register? I mean, I think we note the good work, and we recognise that there's some changes for the better, and I think that's welcomed. And I think I want to thank you for the report. The report is very clear, and we can see straight away what's happening, and I think that's really welcome. And I guess just the committee will continue to monitor and obviously have the relevant input as needed. If there are no other comments, again, I believe this is noting, Kathy. Yeah, members happy to note? Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time. And we're almost there. Agenda item 13, which I believe comes back to yourself, Councillor Edmonds.
I was starting to feel left out there, Chair.
Yeah, I can imagine why. The sundry debt.
Well, can I perhaps start by mentioning the author of this report, the joint author, and that is Mr. Pound. And that's a great name for a principal accountant. Martin has joined the councils just recently, as I say, as a principal accountant, and I'm sure you'd all like to join me in welcoming him to his first audit committee meeting. So, turning to his report, it gives us an update of the Council's sundry debt position as at the 31st of January 23. The arrears covered in this report are split into three categories as follows: sundry debt, housing benefit overpayment recoveries from those still in receipt of housing benefit, and housing benefit overpayment recoveries from those no longer in receipt of housing benefit. There's been a decrease in the levels of sundry debt since September 2022 from 181,000 to £135,000. Included in these figures is a debt of £17,000 due from a local town council. But since producing the report, they've partly paid this debt, and furthermore, they have committed to pay the balance shortly. There's also been a small reduction in housing benefit arrears, both for those who are still in receipt of the benefit and those no longer in receipt of housing benefit. The respective teams are working hard to recover any outstanding debts and will be monitoring the figures on a regular basis. And finally, Chair, the report recommends that the Audit Committee note the position in relation to sundry debt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Martin, do you want to make any comment relating to your report? Welcome to Audit.
Thank you very much, and excuse me, and thank you for the warm welcome there. Just to comment on a previous item where you were trying to get hold of Claire. She was actually engaged on another call at the moment at that time, so apologies for that. I did check. No, I don't think there's anything I want to update on, on the report. One of the things I'm very keen on doing is getting more information out to departments at the appropriate level, showing the levels of debt and how long they've been outstanding. Hopefully we can take action as an organisation much quicker and get paid, debts paid in a timely manner.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for letting us know about Claire. I'm sure that these things happen, so it wasn't a problem. I think this is good news on the whole. Obviously, we don't want any debt, but our debt is decreasing, which is a positive. I think we would like to thank you for your hard work on that, and obviously, going forward, we look forward to that debt decreasing even more. It already partly has, by the sound of things, which is good news. I think one of the comments I wanted to make was relating to one of the debts relating to overpayment of COVID business grant. Had a conversation with the 151 officer about this the other day. I think, where you bear in mind the amount of money that we received on behalf of the government to administer locally, at very short notice, we had to put together a process, find the time amongst a busy schedule to be able to receive applications, go through the applications, and then administer the money. We've got one debt. I think that's an incredible achievement, and I would absolutely like to go down on record, as I'm sure my colleagues here would agree, of thanking the team for the hard work. That is an amazing achievement. Of course, we don't want even one debt, but having one out of all that money that's gone out is a fantastic achievement, and I think it reflects on the professionalism of the team we've got. Members, over to you. Any comments?
Just one, Chair, and also the speed of processing of the grants. And remember, these were going to businesses, small businesses, who were really up against it. So the speed of delivery, of getting that money into the bank accounts was absolutely crucial. So a fantastic effort, and that included long hours, weekend working, tremendous commitment from the whole team.
Which is why I wanted to say thank you.
And other members from other teams as well, I hasten to add. So I think it was a team effort from across the two councils.
No, I'd just like to endorse that. I think it was an incredibly diligent and prudent effort getting it out there and getting it to the right people. And that's because you did such excellent work up front. It's probably meant we've had to chase less than other local authorities as well. But no, really, really impressive. Could I just ask one question? Just noting this, that we've got something like 88,000 of debt is 4 years old. Just looking at, trying to do the maths on it. Yeah. Are we, I mean, no one wants to be seen to be the principle of writing this off, because that sends the wrong message out that we should be constantly chasing debt. But I noticed there was only a small amount of write-offs in the last year, about 670 quid. Should we be writing off more, obviously discreetly, but still have the principle of going out there and chasing it? Because that probably within that 88k, I'm sure there's probably elements that might be quite difficult to get back, and is the cost of it getting it back more than worth it? But
I think that's a valid question. Martin, did you want to respond to that?
Well, being fairly new to the organisation, I'm not quite sure. Yes, I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but looking forward, like I say, one of my keen objectives is to make sure we don't get in that position going forward, and to make sure that information is actually flowing about people, not paying their bills as they should be, and the significant amounts that need to be chased, on very quickly, to make sure we don't go, into that position in the future. I'd have to refer to my two bosses sat in the room about our plans to write off, but I'm sure we will be reviewing those debts in the near future.
Thank you. I think that was handled perfectly well. I'll hand over to your bosses. Who wants to comment? Pauline or?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Martin. So in terms of write-offs, we will be looking at them. As we approach year end, we do a review anyway, and it's something on Martin's list is to have a look at those that are not cost effective to pursue, because unfortunately the smaller amounts, they just aren't cost effective. So we want to look at all of our debts and just see if there are potential for more write-offs, but it is something we will be looking at in the near future.
Thank you. Yes.
I'll just come back on one point, and I think I'm so glad to have you in place, Martin. I think I've said this for the last 24 years I've been on the council. I think when it comes to debt, with households getting into the debt, the sooner you can address it with them, the better for them as well. Because you do get, we get a case of it at work, and where I am, is that once people get into this debt scenario, they mentally shut down, they shut the door, they stop looking at things. But actually, if you're opening up dialogue really early, it's the best way to achieve it, and mentally it's the best way for them as well. So it works well on two fronts. Thank you.
That's an excellent point, Councillor Ridges. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think, probably all of us know people who have been in that situation, and it's horrible, and it isn't always through fault either. Things happen. So I completely endorse that. Thank you for that comment. Members, any other comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor Davis. Yes, you did indicate. My apologies.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, it's one of our previous council, back a few years, we had a councillor, Councillor Stevens, who was obsessed with two things. One was councillors' expenses, and the other one was sundry debts. And I think he used to come up with these wonderful calculations of different councils around the country and how long it took to actually recover debt. You remember that? At least he remembers that. He remembers these little fantastic calculations. And then, but one of the things he was banging the drum about was we need someone chasing up these debts. I get in, as Councillor Richard said, we get in early. At least we get a couple of pound back a week or something, or a month. At least we're getting somewhere. And I think it's it's great that we've got to focus on this, because this is an area that can soon escalate and get out of control.
Yeah.
And we can start losing money and find it increases. So it's great we've got a team working at this. I'm just echoing what everybody else has said. Really, it's just really good.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Davis. I absolutely agree. Any other comments, members? Nobody wants to prolong things any longer? Just checking. I think we're noting this report. Again, Martin, thank you very much for joining us, and if we're back next term, look forward to seeing you again.
You're welcome.
Members, happy to note? Noted, thank you. Members, thank you very much, and officers, thank you very much, and visitors, thank you very much for joining us for this meeting. I determine this meeting closed.